Welcome to the Vet Med Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges vet med leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the vet med profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it.
Hey everybody, Crystal Stokes here, and joining me today is Alyssa Mages, like Pages. Helps me remember it. Thank you, Alyssa. So she has 20 years of experience in the veterinary field and really a lifetime of thinking outside of the box. She's the CBO of Empowering Veterinary Teams and is their go-to gal for developing content and ensuring both clinical and human skills are taught and messages are heard. When she's not creating, teaching, or saving furry lives, she's hanging out with her family, amazing hubby, two young and spectacular humans, and their cranktastic cat, Butter. I want to meet Butter. Alyssa, because she is always on the go, and I'm so glad that we were able to make the time today to connect. Thanks for being here, Alyssa.
Oh, Crystal, it's great to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Well, I thought before we dive into EVT and all things vet med, could you start with this little bit of a story? Like, what were you up to before Empowering Veterinary Teams was created?
I was the learning and development coordinator at a large ER spec hospital just nearby. I'm outside the Philadelphia area. I'm in the suburbs. And so I had a team of about a baker's dozen of trainers and made sure that I was cross-trained in all the ologies, right? So anytime there was someone new on the team or we needed to upskill somebody, that was my department. And spent some time in academia. I taught at my alma mater, and my majority of my career was in emergency and critical care and anesthesia. And then I did a few years in oncology, and I loved that. The plan was originally to get my VTS. But life has other plans, as it tends to do. So I've had 7 knee surgeries and just found out like a confirmed diagnosis this past year that I have Ehlers-Danlos. So it's a connective tissue disorder, and you don't make collagen. Long story short, I found out I was not going to be able to be on my feet for 12, 14 hours at a time anymore. I'm in my early 40s, and bending down to the lower cages it's crunchy. Those knees are crunchy. So I really professionally was in that space. And then I do have 2 young humans there. I have a teenage daughter and a preteen son. And they needed me around actually more now than then. So it's kind of one of those moments where, my best friend, we've been friends for 22 years. She'll kill me for telling you that, but that's all right. And we both got to that stage of like, all right, we want to make a difference. We don't want to work for anybody else anymore. What could we do? So at a family party where we'd sat there and had a few too many bevies. Since then, I don't drink anymore. Not because of that. Caitlin, it wasn't. We're like, all right, let's do this. And what are we going to do? We're going to get into vet med and we're going to change the world. And that's been the goal. So that was 5 years ago. We had the idea, and we launched right in the middle of the pandemic. Not the best timing, except it was, right? It gave us the chance to really pivot into the virtual space and figure out what we were doing. And we actually, so it was a journey of, okay, I'm going to do this, pivot. Oh, not going to do that, pivot, figure it out. And you hit those roadblocks and kind of readjust and take those SMART goals and make them smarter.
Wow. You're really quick on your feet. It sounds like, adaptable and nimble, and feeling like, I guess that true line of you wanted to be in vet med, you want to make a difference, but the way and the how were kind of changing form, where you knew you wanted to do something that was your own. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's you can only do so much when you're within 4 walls.
Yeah.
And I was helping people that I worked with, which was amazing. And that practice is still full of incredible people. But there's so many more that I wanted to reach if I could.
Yes. So. And I really was excited to have you on, because I meet so many people in vet med who are in a place in their career where they're saying, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Whatever that current role is, whether they're working as a technician or a manager or a veterinarian in clinics, something like that. where, like you mentioned, like the body is like, hey, I don't want to sustain this kind of physical load. It might be the type of work is just becoming kind of monotonous. Maybe it's not fitting in with their other goals in life, like having a family. And then some people feel like, well, I guess I need to leave the industry. That happens. Like, I feel like that's often the first thought that is had. I was one of those people, by the way, like, well, clearly if I can't tolerate economic euthanasia, I can't work in the industry, which is not necessarily true. So I love having people on that have gone a non-traditional route and have remained in vet med and flourished, kind of marching to the beat of their own drum. So that's part of like why I was very excited to have you on today and share that part of your story.
Well, thanks. And I think it's important to note too, like there's so much you can do within a practice too. Even like if there was a potential for, my brain to be contained, which is why I'm glad I have a business partner, because I have all these grand ideas. I need someone to make them tangible. But I mean, I could have shifted into more of a telehealth role, or gone into more of a, progressed and worked my way up into management, and they were, willing to do that kind of training and things like that. So if you are looking for another role within a practice, make it, create it. You can do that. There's nothing that says you can't. I just knew that I had so much inside that I needed to get out. But to your point, I love this profession, and I post about it all the time. Yes, it's a bit broken, but that's okay. There's art in that. There's kintsugi, right? That art of Japanese pottery, where if it's broken, just pour the gold into it and make it better and stronger. So
beautiful. So given that desire you had to do something new, and you all came with this idea of empowering veterinary teams, tell us more about that. What were some of the problems you were trying to solve, and how did this model come to be? For those who've never heard of you, which probably aren't very many people, honestly. But let's pretend like the people have not heard of this.
Well, they might have heard of me. I'm involved in a few other organizations. I'm sitting here wearing my Mentor Vet Tech hoodie. But for EVT, we're still really small, right? There's 2 full-time people, and there's 5 others that are on a contractual basis, which is great because they're still in practice. They've got their hands in it. They're getting dirty on a regular basis. But what I was seeing is, we got into the profession to be the voice for the voiceless, our patients, right? The pets. And then I noticed it was the people I worked with that were not being heard. Mm-hmm. And that was not okay. Mm-hmm. And, having new ideas and a different outlook on training and coaching and growth and development. What did that mean? Now, my degree, I have a bachelor's in marine biology, and I have my associates for veterinary technology. And I've taken, I can't even tell you how many certificate programs on education, coaching, all of these things. I don't have a degree in it, but I do have certificates and loads of experience. But what struck me was, we have these standardized exams, like the NAVLE for veterinarians, the VTNE for vet techs. And then if you're a vet tech specialist, there's even more accreditation and examination. And you have to tick all these boxes of all these approved skills and whatnot. But when you get into practice, and how do you progress in your career there's no standard approach. It's per practice, and it depends on the state, and it depends on this. Well, in my state, in Pennsylvania, you don't have to be credentialed, and you can call yourself a vet tech. So I was like, I get it. You have to customize it, because what works for, Noah's Ark Animal Hospital isn't going to work for ABC Vet Clinic. I understand that, but we all need to be able to start on the same, page, and then progress and move up from there. And stop focusing on the person, right? Don't put all of the weight on the shoulders. You got to focus on the process, right? So instead of labeling people as beginners, intermediate, and advanced, how are they they're emerging and evolving through their skills, and not a 0 to 1 proficiency, but they're learning, developing, and implementing, right? So words matter. And so we took a look at the existing materials that were out there, and I was like, yeah, no. So revamp that, took a look at the AVMA skills for technicians, and then what else is out there for assistants. And thank goodness there's a new organization for CSRs, right? Thanks, Debbie Boone and Rhonda and Jill. It's amazing. But there wasn't something like that yet. And it's either, it's always been an us versus them mentality. I was like, this can't. It's a team-based approach, no more top-down hierarchical. Let's redo the org structure. Let's look at workflows. And utilization, it's always been a thing, right? We came up with I was part of the task force with the vet tech utilization guidelines last year, but we wrote about that 20 years ago, before I was even in the profession. This has always been a thing. So let's keep making it at the forefront. The more we talk about it, and let's streamline it, let's organize it, let's engage with it. And it works, right? We have the numbers now. We're getting there to be like, hey, efficiency improves when you utilize your team. Oh, look, role clarity matters. We can go from 3 surgeries to 7. We can go from 15 appointments to 20. And you're out on time.
That sounds
so. It's, is it going to work for everybody? No, but that's why our tagline is we meet you where you are with what you need, because not every practice wants a whole training program. We create programs from soup to nuts. We do the materials if you want to do it a la carte. You want some CE? We got you. You need some training mannequins? We'll help you build it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really taking a look at what is your pain point? Let's fix it. And it's not a Band-Aid on an artery. It's how are we going to get to the root of the problem?
Mm-hmm. So would you say the primary area that you saw a need in was the development of the technical team, from tech assists to technicians, the whole, were you support team on techs, or were you also focusing beyond technicians at that point?
Yeah, I mean, because I am one, that's my cohort. Those are my people. But I was an assistant for years, right? And I learned a ton on the job, absolutely. But the whys matter. And that's why I went back to school to get the degree. But the CSR is like, we wouldn't have jobs without the customer service reps, without the receptionists. So what's the incentive for them to show up every day? Who's recognizing them? Who's upskilling them? Who's saying, hey, you actually need to know the medical terminology. Let's go through this. This is the type of conversations you need to have. Here's some communication skills. Hey, whole practice, what is your culture like from a communication and personality standpoint? This is why it might not be working. Mm-hmm. So every team we work with gets a learning analysis and a communication style. And then we pair our trainers up with them. And then within the team, when we start to create it with them, we're like a tapering predose. We come in hard and heavy, then wean ourselves off.
Yeah, I love that example.
Yeah. And so it works. But you have to, again, identify who you're working with, what they need, and meet them there.
Let's make this really concrete for people listening then. If you could let's just start with one example of, start us off with the pain point they contacted you with. So you don't have to, we can keep all the info confidential, but feel free to paint the picture for those listening. They're like, not really sure, would this help me or not? Maybe we can target how people enter. And this was the journey they went on. And this was how it came to an end, the full arc of working together.
Absolutely. So the initial contact was, hey, we know that you do CE. We'd like to do CPR training. Now I'm Recover certified. I'm not a rescuer, so the people that attend, I can't certify in that, but they can get the CE certificate at least. We are CE providers. So we started there, and they're like, it'd be really great. If you do you have any courses on, workflow and efficiency? And I was like, not courses, but I have a training program. So what they were frustrated with is they couldn't turn over more than, 2 or 3 procedures on their surgery days. And they would be seeing 10 to 15 appointments on their appointment days, but they'd be staying 2 hours after to clean up and do all the things. And everyone was at each other and nitpicking, and it wasn't feeling like a good place to be. Mm-hmm. So I was in touch with Josh Weissman with Flourish, because it's, chicken or the egg. What do you fix first? The culture or the efficiency? And, I talked with the practice owner. I was like, these are the options. This is what we can do. This is what my friend can do. She's like, let's start with the technical and getting the workflow, and then we can work on and see what that does for the culture. And then we can go from there. And so what we did was we did a team evaluation. We went there for 4 hours because it was a 5-doctor practice. They had about a total of 30 team members. So it wasn't huge, but it wasn't super small. And so I had 4 team members with me, and one spent the time with the receptionists, other was with management and leadership, and the other one was with the medical team. And then we shifted from surgery to appointments, and we were just taking notes the whole time. Before we even got there, we had them fill out a self-assessment of, how do you think this is going? Every member of the team. Oh boy, did it differ from what the receptionists were feeling to what the management was seeing, and what the doctors were experiencing. It was not the same thing. And so then we took our notes, and then my team and I would sit down, we'd compile a full report and say, okay, this is what you said. This is what we saw. These are our recommendations. This is what we can do. Mm-hmm. So they opted to sign on for a 3-month program where we were there for the first month, 3 days a week, the second month, 2 days a week, and the final month, once a week, focusing on tasks like roles and responsibilities, role clarity, making sure who was doing what from the front desk to the back, getting into the OR, that was their biggest pain point was surgical flow. They couldn't turn things over, and we found out that the assistants were monitoring and the technicians were doing like prep work and things like, nope. One credentialed technician, 2 assistants. And as soon as we started doing that and really getting the process streamlined, it just started, the speed would increase, the confidence. We worked on skills as we were doing it. So it was a combination of coaching and training, because they're not the same thing, which I know you know. Mm-hmm. So we were really focused on supporting the team as they were going through it, but kind of making tweaks as we go, but with their input. It was never like, this is what you need to do. It was, this is what we're seeing. This is what we're, experiencing. What are you seeing? Right. And then giving these suggestions and like, this is what we've come up with. This is what you historically have done. It's not that different. We're just tweaking a few things so they could see that we were taking into consideration what had been there for 30 plus years, right? It was an established practice. Mm-hmm. Because that's the challenge too. You don't want to go in there and be like, this is awful. What are you doing? That's insulting, and it's inaccurate. It's like, I've only been doing this for 5 years. Who am I? So it was really making sure that we could identify what was holding them up, mm-hmm. and what we could do to make that more streamlined, more efficient. And then as we were going through it, identifying like, actually, Sammy, it's not their real name. She's amazing at calculations, and Elizabeth is incredible at, venipuncture and things like that, but you're not having them do their things. Right? It's a person who loves to do training but doesn't want to be on the floor all the time. We'll have her oversee that and put her in a telehealth position. So she does all the callbacks and all the labs and all of this. And so that's done. And you don't have 15 people trying to call the same person back. One doctor has the same CSR, same assistant, same tech all day. Mm-hmm. So they're running the appointments. And so it was involved, and I'm talking a lot, but it was very detailed. It was making sure surgery flow was better, appointment flow was better, and the team was effectively utilized. And within 3 months, it had done a complete 180.
Wow. And do you still keep up with them at all? Do you stay in?
I actually just was emailing with her today. So for the 6 months after we wrap the program, we do a 1 month check-in that's included in the program, in the price point. And so we meet with management, and we do like exit interviews with everyone that went through the training to be like, what did you like? What didn't you like? Mm-hmm. Where are you at? And then do a final wrap up at the end of those 6 months. And if you need more CE, let us know.
That's so fun. I really appreciate how you're actually touching on all different aspects in the hospital. You're not neglecting front desk, for instance, which I think often gets sort of, like, hey, what about us? We're up here. That's all a part of the workflow, as a patient enters the building, all the way to when they're being discharged, that they have the hands-on first. So I think it's beautiful that your process is really like very holistic in how you go about it. Do you have examples of maybe like a spec or ER that you have worked with? Because I know GP and then specialty and ER are all they have their different pain points.
Different worlds. Mm. So what they were, and that one was really fun because they were in Canada, like West Coast Canada. So Philly to Canada, they're like, we can't fly you out here. It's like, no, but we have phones and you have a GoPro.
Yes.
So that's what we did. And then we're in the first
smart.
Well, I mean, you gotta, and then it turned out I have family out West. And so in Vancouver area. And so I was like, hey, I'll be there. Why don't I come and see how things have gone since we wrapped things up? So they were going through a move to a new facility, and they did not have time to create the materials and to make sure that it was standardized across. They were going to have 2 locations and things like that. So they needed everything to match, and they needed to know what the methodology was to roll it out. So when we create what are traditionally called skill sets, we don't call them that. And when we also look at the leveling protocols, which we don't call them that either. So you have how they do that, but you need the protocols in place for why. So that way, when someone comes on board, it's not just like, okay, here are the things you have to do. This is how they tie in. And then management is like, oh, this is how it ties in and, correlates to pay. Mm-hmm. So if you are not meeting them, and it's not simply clinical skills, it's human skills too. So are we talking about low stress handling? Are we looking at communication? Do you understand what, self-awareness and emotional intelligence is? So it's just at the very high level, because we're not focusing on well-being and things as a lot of us are trained in it. That's not our area of expertise. We know who those people are. So for them, it was really making sure that we could see how their workflow was in both locations, and then making materials that would be applicable to, again, each three of those roles. And it was really focused on standardization, so that as everybody came in, and they would start with like these emergency foundational skills, and then it could translate into internal medicine, oncology, dentistry, all those kinds of things. So everyone started at the foundations, and then you could build into your next specialty once you've completed the first level of emergency.
That's wonderful. And when you are working on that level, how many people within the team are part of the training?
So at that was in the pretty early phases. So there was only 3 of us. So it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
But there was, 2 of us on camera. And then all 3 of us would connect and just write the content and do the editing together. But in the beginning, it was mostly me and my partner that was doing the majority of it.
And for me, if I would say let's say I'm a technician on the floor there, how many different team members like me were you serving? And how does that look? Like if I'm a tech listening to this, and I'm like, what would this be like if you came to my hospital? Like, how would you be interacting with me? Let's say it is virtual too. Like, tell me more about that. Do I get any one-on-one time with you? Is it mostly group? Are there virtual videos I'm watching? Like, paint the back end picture for me.
For sure. So again, this is the very early stages. So like we had just launched, and this was happening in like 2021. So we were figuring that out as we went. So we have full transparency. So no, we don't do the training videos. We're working on curating our CE library and recording those. We're working with a separate LMS because I do not have the bandwidth to run that on our site. That's going to be through a second party who's been doing this for years, and they're phenomenal at it. So we're working on that. But what it looks like, it depends on the program that they pick. So if you want just like the just like the bare bones, and it's going to be working with management and like the team leads of each department. If you want more one-on-one, that's going to be more time, and, the cost goes up from there. So you have options, and we would meet with that organization virtually. I would do like meetings like on Zoom or Teams, what have you, and just, okay, walk me through the day. What have you been working on? And it took it off of the trainers at the location because they didn't have the time to do it because of everything that was going on. I could verbally go through, and they could demonstrate skills on camera, and I could sign them off. So it's really, what do you need us to do for this training process? Like, we created the materials. Okay, we can take care of the majority of the team. And so that's an option. When we're on site, I pair up my trainers with the team. Mm-hmm. So if, for my sake, I'm a very, let's see, if those of you that aren't familiar with DISC, I'm very direct, yes. But the I is for influence and much positivity, enthusiasm. And so those are my top 2 things. So I belong in surgery for the most part because I need to make it happen. And my director of training, Jesse, is like that as well. And so is our lead trainer, Danny. He's really like, and some of the teams are like, he knows too much. He's intimidating. Like, he's a teddy bear. It's fine. He's really wonderful. And some of the other trainers are more focused on the communication, and they sit with the receptionist and go through that. And so that is when it's in person, it is really hands-on, and it is very much one-on-one. So if there's more team members that need more, then we do that as well. And then if it's a group setting, that's the big focus, especially when we're in ORs and things like that, appointments. I try to stay out of the way, because especially if it's live clients, they don't need to be a part of that. That's not going to be helpful. So it's really taking a look at the structure and talking with the team individually. Like, what do you feel you'd benefit most from? This is what I'm seeing, but I need to know what your comfort level is, because 75% of our profession is not extroverted like I am. So I can be a lot for some people. So making sure that I'm very conscious of that, and I'm not like leaning into their personal space when they're like, And so then we focused on written materials, and we do phone calls instead of FaceTimes, and making sure that they fill that out at the beginning of their self-assessment of, this is how I learn, this is how I prefer this is where my skills are at, this is where I'd like to grow.
Lovely. I'm going to ask you a little bit more of a personal probably question. Through the whole course of the years of developing EVT and to where you are today, what would you say are some of your bigger challenges along the road of whether it's client facing or internal or juggling the balls of being a working woman with family? Like, what would you say number one, number two challenges through the last 5 years?
Number one is understanding how business works, right? That is not what I was taught, right? That's not my background. And so understanding what B2B means versus B2C, and okay, let's talk about, your EIN number and all of these things. And it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. So fortunately, my business partner has an MBA, and that's why she's the ops director and she, COO, and she does all of those things. That's been a big challenge. And then it's this, I know this will work. I need to get people to sign on to it and be ongoing, right? So people are like, that's a great idea. This is amazing. I'm like, and they're like, yeah, no, we're good. We'll do it internally. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Let me know how that goes. So, I mean, those two are pretty much tied. The balance thing for me, it took about, I'd say 6 to 8 months before I realized that I really needed to not work every day. And, I have a in-home office where I spend a lot of the time, but when I'm not on the road, but at 3:00 usually, I'm done for a few hours, because that's when all the stuff happens after school, right? And I want to be there for that. And so then usually if I'm sitting at the pool for swim practice, I have my laptop and I'm doing what I need to do, and then come home, it's bedtime. And I mean, my she's 16, right? She's like, I don't need you around. It's fine. Actually, I prefer if you weren't near me at this point in time. So no, she's an absolute delight, honestly. I was awful in my teenage years. She is not.
Yeah.
So, but I'm tired by the end of the day. So usually I'm wrapped at 8:00 unless I have a webinar or something, which tends to happen, especially this month. I have a webinar every week for Techtober. Yay. Yay. So I would say that the top two are, really understanding the logistics of business and the finance world and things like that. And then having the industry understand what it is that we do and why it would be beneficial long-term and bigger scale.
Beautiful. What would you say your top 1 or 2 wins have been? Your favorite moments?
Well, just seeing the client, like the clinics that get it. And then when we finish the program, they're like, oh my God, like this is what it could have been. And this is what it is. Like, it's just, those aha moments are just amazing. And I've been very fortunate that I have connected with some incredible people in the industry, present company, of course, included. So I've been on the national speaking circuit for the past 2 or 3 years, and big in the past couple of years. And so to be invited to events that are, on, like a VMX, and the room is full and they're there to see you. It's like, wow, that's really cool. But I think really what the biggest thing is for me is that we're at a turning point right now where I don't have to be the face of EVT anymore. It's the team, right? My team is coming up, and we're heading to VMX again this year, and our director of training is going to be headlining it. I'm there to support, and I am so excited because it means that it's going forward, right? It's not all riding on me, and it that's what it was for, right? I created this so that there is an opportunity for people in the industry, and I wish I could hire all the amazing people. I just can't afford to pay you yet. I'm getting there, but to grow it beyond ourselves,
right?
And so that's, I think, my biggest win is seeing that that's starting to happen.
That's beautiful. For those listening today that are interested in learning more, first, what's the way most people first get introduced or contact EVT?
Contact. We're on all the social platforms. So if you just, search, as my kids say, search us up. I'm like, that's not how that, whatever. So send us a message. And if you Google us, our SEO isn't awful. So you should find us. And we're around.
Okay. I will link everything up, your website, all your socials, so that people can easily find you, and just encourage people to reach out. Check this out. I do think that it's sort of a hidden gem. It's not something that's on top of mind when we think about the challenges that we're facing inside of veterinary clinics. I think that we often realize that workflow is a pain point, like, but why? And figuring out how to make it better. The answers might not be what we superficially think them to be. And I really appreciate your methodology of going in and really trying to dig down deep and do an analysis to help, co-create a unique plan for that specific hospital. Sounds like you all put a lot of care and thought and attention into your process, and the results show, the care that you put into it. I'm really proud of the work you all are doing.
Thanks. We'd like to do more. So I simply want to leave the world and this profession better than I found it. And, and make sure that it doesn't all look like me. I mean, I have a funky haircut, but it's such a vanilla profession, and it needs to not be. It needs to reflect the communities that we serve. That's part of it too, is we need to make sure that we are, diverse in all the, not just in melanin, but in all the ways, and inclusive, and that we are aware that it's a holistic approach, right? It's yes, mental health, but it's all health, right? We need to take care of all of that too.
Well, thanks for, like you said in the very beginning, kind of being the voice for those who may not feel like they have a voice, and for bringing this, more light and attention to the folks that need the help and the systems that need the help and the processes. Just the complexity of it is not lost on me. And I've really just loved the work that you're putting in to help more people understand it. Like coming on the podcast today and just shining the light. I hope those listening today are intrigued and will take the step to reach out, check out your website, and learn more.
Well, thank you for having the conversation with me. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks for being on, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know. And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.